Hello friends, welcome to Inner Tales. I hope your day has been gentle, and if not, may this story give you a quiet breath of peace. Wishing you warmth, calm, and good things ahead. And before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe to Inner Tales. The greatest waste in life is not the hours we lose or the money we misplace. It is the pain we never sit with long enough to understand what it was trying to say. His name was Evan, 27, the kind of man people described as nice because they didn't know him well enough to call him anything else. His apartment was small and quiet, a bookshelf leaning slightly to one side, a coffee cup always left half full on his desk, a plant he kept forgetting to water, but somehow refused to let die. From the outside, his life seemed steady, predictable, safe, but inside him, stories kept repeating, stories with different faces, but the same ending. A breakup that felt familiar, even when the names changed. A pattern of arguments at work that always circled back to the same silence. A feeling that, every few months, his world collapsed in a way he'd already lived through before. And after each collapse, he whispered the same promise to himself. I'll move on. He believed that sentence. The same way people believe a road leads somewhere, just because it's straight. But moving on isn't the same as moving forward. And Evan didn't know. He had been walking in circles. At 23, he fell in love for the first time in a way young people often do, with too much hope and too little understanding of themselves. He built a relationship like a house. Without checking the foundation, he tried to be everything: support, comfort, certainty, without ever admitting he was afraid of being left behind. When the relationship ended, it wasn't dramatic. Just two people sitting across a small table, avoiding each other's eyes, speaking softly so their hearts wouldn't break too loudly. But the silence afterward was louder than anything he'd ever heard. He walked home under a sky that looked the same, but somehow nothing in him was where it used to be. For weeks, his world shrank into small routines, scrolling old conversations, editing memories to find a moment he could blame, playing songs he didn't even like, just because they matched the weight in his chest. And when time finally softened the edges of the hurt, he thought he had healed, but he had only buried the wound under new days and new distractions. A year later, another relationship came. Gentle, hopeful, different in all the ways that matter on the surface, yet strangely familiar beneath it. The arguments grew slowly, not storms, but thin cracks along the walls of the house. He once again built too quickly. He stayed quiet when he should have spoken. He apologized, even when the ache inside him came from something deeper than a simple mistake. And when it ended, he didn't even cry. He just felt tired. A tiredness that didn't belong to this breakup alone, but to all the ones before it. He told himself, it's fine, I'll move on. But something in him knew he wasn't moving anywhere. One evening, after a long day filled with small frustrations that somehow felt bigger than they should, Evan walked up to the rooftop of his old building. The air carried a faint chill. Lights from surrounding apartments flickered like quiet lives in motion. He stood at the edge, not dangerously close, just close enough to feel the wideness of the world against the smallness of his thoughts. He didn't want answers. He just wanted the noise in his chest to stop echoing. That was when he heard slow footsteps behind him. Mr. Alden, his elderly neighbor, a man whose face carried soft lines, shaped by years of surviving quietly. "You look troubled," the old man said, watering the plants he kept in broken clay pots. "Not troubled from today, but troubled from many days before it." Evan tried to laugh. "I guess life has been heavier than usual." The old man nodded thoughtfully. "Life grows heavy when we carry pain instead of learning from it." His voice was gentle, but the words landed deep. He pointed to a crack on the rooftop floor. "See this? If I trip here once, it's an accident. If I trip here again, it is because I didn't pay attention." Something shifted inside Evan, a quiet recognition he had been avoiding for years. The next evening, Evan returned with a small notebook. He sat cross-legged on the concrete floor, feeling strangely young, like a child about to admit something difficult. He opened the notebook and chose one story, the heartbreak he thought he had forgotten, because the world no longer asked him about it. He wrote slowly, not because he didn't remember, but because remembering felt like pulling threads from a fabric he wasn't sure he wanted to unravel. He wrote about the first moment things felt wrong, the dinner where he swallowed his frustration and smiled anyway, the long nights where he waited for a message that came too late and meant too little. And then he wrote the sentence that seemed to repeat in every chapter of his life. "I didn't say what I truly felt." He stared at the words. They stared back. A strange calm washed over him, the kind that comes when something finally makes sense, in a painful but honest way. He had not been unlucky. He had been silent. In the days that followed, Evan wrote a little each night. He didn't chase clarity. He simply let the truth rise slowly, like fog lifting from a lake. He wrote about work, how he grew defensive when confronted because he feared being seen as not enough. He wrote about friendships he let fade because he didn't know how to say, "I need you," without feeling weak. He wrote about the anger he carried toward people who no longer mattered, and realized the anger survived only because the lesson had not yet been learned. Pain stopped feeling like a punishment. It began to feel like a teacher with a quiet voice he had ignored for too long. A few months later, life didn't magically transform, but Evan did. A new relationship came, soft and unhurried. One evening, a small misunderstanding surfaced, the kind that once would have grown into another silent ache. His chest tightened at first, the old instinct rising, the instinct to swallow his voice and hope the storm passes. But this time, he spoke, slowly, honestly, and to his surprise, the world didn't collapse. The moment didn't break him. It healed something that had always broken too easily. At work, when tension brewed, he paused long enough to see the story behind the moment, to recognize where his fears were hiding, and invite them into the light, instead of letting them run the show. Small choices, small changes, but the kind that slowly rewrite a life. Maybe you carry a story like his, a wound shaped like a person, or a disappointment that still whispers. When the night grows still, pain asks for attention, not avoidance. It repeats itself until we finally listen. You don't need to call it a gift. You don't need to feel grateful for it. You only need the courage to sit with it long enough to understand what part of you it has been trying to reach. Tonight, choose one small memory. Place it gently on a page, not to reopen the wound, but to release the confusion around it, not to suffer again, but to let your life grow in the places you once feared to look. Because the moment you stop wasting your pain stops choosing your future. And that is how a new life begins. Not with a miracle, but with a quiet decision to finally listen. If this story stirred something in you, share one small thought in the comments. A memory, a feeling, a line that stayed. Your words might be what someone else needs tonight.